Superheroes are a strange fascination. In a world of corruption and war, we turn to the stories of fictional characters for hope and belief in our future. And especially in the scope of the 21st century, the concept of a superhero has been the beacon of that hope, a beacon of those beliefs. Why do we turn to fiction for this sense of optimism? Perhaps it's for the freeing spirit of a world that breaks physics in its pursuit of imagination? Perhaps it's for the deeper themes of philosophy behind the spandex, the power dynamic between a god and his men, and the responsibility that comes with that strength. Or maybe, as clinical psychologist Rosie Rosenberg puts it, the story of our heroes' origins help us cope with adversity in our own lives, allowing us to find meaning in loss and trauma, discovering our strengths and using them for a good purpose. Or maybe it's none of that. Maybe it's not about clinical psychology or a fictional sense of freedom. Maybe, at the end of the day, the most important job for a superhero is as simple as being there for a kid during the weirdest times of his life to show him the potential of a damn good character. The Batman 2004 is a show I've respected, grown with, and adored all my life. From the moment my mum bought me the Season 3 DVD collection at Target, to the countless episodes I've rewatched after a good long day at work, this was a show that I've held close to me for a long time. Earlier this year, as this dreadful pandemic came to rise, I got the chance to make a video elaborating my past love for the show, and my deep-rooted nostalgia was nothing to be afraid of. The video did really well. I mean, partly it's because you got a really sexy Australian voice behind it all, and helped introduce me to some folks I really admire. However, over the past year, while working on more and more video essays and while pouring my heart into these short films, I've grown more reflective toward that video, the discussion surrounding it, and the show as a whole. So yeah, a year and a half later, I think it's time for me to finally revisit the show, to finally understand how the Batman 2004 defines my DC universe.
How'd you do that? I'm the Batman.
When you think Batman, you probably think of the noir-inspired tone of the Caped Crusader. His cape flowing in the wind as he flings his batarang, taking down criminals and corruption alike in a single flick. It's probably misty, eerie, a detective in the shadows, doing the work of the devil to keep the innocent safe, an aura surrounded in darkness. Now listen to this shit. Side note, I used this very theme over on my own channel at Production Journal in my review of Telltale's Batman, which I believe is still the only adaptation that comes close to mimicking this unique style. We live in a world where there are supposedly only two directions to take the character of Batman, either fully camp, upbeat and comedy driven, or depressing and moody and embraced with darkness. However, this show comes in with a completely new interpretation of tone for the Caped Crusader, throwing away the existing aesthetics for a unique and a more modernized take on the hero, emphasizing the cool, the arrogance and the sleekness of the world's greatest detective. The Bat doesn't move like a brawler or a heavyweight. With the slim design of Jeff Matsuda's art, this interpretation of the character moves fast and swift, evading attacks before landing the knockout punch. The show emphasizes his gadgets and accessories as he pulls out a grappling hook and swings across buildings in a snap. The world of the show is heightened alongside the distinctly new character looks, and the Batman himself is designed to match that level of sway. I mean, just look at those claws. Beyond the animation, this new tone is seated in the character himself. 3 years into his crusade, our Bruce Wayne is more than just a loner haunted by the nightmares of his childhood. He's also just a guy trying to find a way to balance both parts of his life. From the first episode on, we watch him struggle to find time for Bruce Wayne while devoting himself to the work of the Batman. While the season stays mostly anthological, we continue to get bits and pieces of this dynamic Bruce has with himself and the people around him, doing everything he can to keep his city safe while also coming to terms with the loss of his parents. And don't get the show wrong, it's not the standard depiction of a brooding, sad emo boy who just sits in front of a painting all day. The show paints Bruce as an active character. Someone trying to go out into the world and do something with his life, as opposed to sitting in a cave all day, living with depression and enacting justice through vengeance. I think this show portrays my favourite version of Batman on this factor alone. He feels more like a human, someone we can relate to, and someone we can aspire to become. And I think there's no better way of depicting a character like this, especially in a kid's cartoon. With a lot of kids' shows, there's this implication that the characters will remain stagnant, resistant to change, so that from episode to episode, any kid of the relevant demographic can pick up the show and run along with it. However, the late 2000s and early 2010s seem to break a lot of those cartoon stereotypes. I think that's why we look fondly to the past shows like Ben 10, The Spectacular Spider-Man, and even Avatar: The Last Airbender. We watched our heroes and role models grow up and change, and accordingly, we grew up with them too. Unlike some of these other shows, the Batman kept its non-narrative format, though we can still observe changes in our characters as the show goes along. In a way, it's kind of the best of both worlds, rewarding its longtime fans with character growth that changes our perspectives on this world, while also allowing anyone to pick up the show at any time it was on the air and still enjoy it. Heck, I only jumped on the show in the middle of season 3 with the Batgirl stuff. Alright, I'm gonna stop you right there. Not happy with what happened last time. Did I have a crush on her as a kid? Yes. Am I a simp? Yeah. So I'm gonna clear the record. Not a simp. Speaking of, I think the sidekicks are the best way to showcase this growth between seasons. We start off this show with a single Batman, apprehensive to change, apprehensive to partners, and apprehensive to a lot of himself that isn't the Batman. But as the first 2 seasons go on, he opens up to his comrades and he expands his circle of trust. By the end of the 2nd season, he's established himself as the permanent hero to the city, continuing his crusade for more than just his parents, but for the future of the children of Gotham.
All I ask is that you help me make Gotham a safe place for my daughter to grow up in.
For your daughter, then.
Batgirl's introduction is the full manifestation of that ideology. She's a character who represents personal responsibility and taking up that responsibility to save those closest to her. And it's not just Ivy. She takes up the mantle out of inspiration, wanting to do more with her life than routines and gymnastics. Batgirl, at least to me, is the representation of that growth, a representation of the responsibility taking hold of someone and unlocking their true potential. And if Batgirl is a character centralized around taking up that responsibility, then Robin is another reflection of that, a character burdened with the trauma put upon him, but through Batman, and more importantly through Bruce, he learns how to heal himself, taking up the mantle not out of vengeance, but justice for those he has lost and hope for those just like him. As the show goes on, he fully embraces that role, not only giving himself purpose, but adding an additional layer to the Batman himself. And as the show enters its 4th and 5th season, we go to greater lengths to depict Bruce as this fatherly and nurturing figure to both Dick and Babs, keeping them both close as his newfound family. Dick. An important thing this show does with this new Bat family dynamic is lean into this brighter tone. With the addition of characters like Robin, Batgirl, the Justice League, and a whole sort of wacky rogues, it's natural for this show to shift tones a bit from the first couple seasons. But in this case, I think it works to its advantage. The presentation of plot and story reminds me a lot of the moral structure of something like Avatar and Young Justice. Almost every non-linear episode has a core theme or lesson. The episode starts off with our heroes not fully functioning with that in mind, but as the episode goes on, they learn the value of that lesson and end the episode with a triumph. Sure, it's a formula of sorts, but it's a formula that works to the advantage of a medium provided through a kid's show. Reflecting on other shows at the time, I feel like so many of these stories were presented in a way to impact us as kids with a striking visual or dark moment, only for us to revisit those memories 10 years down the line and have those themes hit us with full impact. Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, and even aspects of Justice League Unlimited have darker themes at hand that got to us when we were older. But this show knew it was for kids and drew from that audience as a strength instead of a weakness. As they learn lessons about life, we learn with them, and in turn we feel closer with these representations of the Batman mythos. As high as they soar across the rooftops of Gotham, they still feel like human beings we can grow with. In a way, we feel like we can become them. The modern era of Batman is about a character that doesn't necessarily fit all the traditional tropes of the classic superhero. He doesn't have powers to set him apart from mankind, his stories are so focused on defeating evil that we don't exactly see him as the symbol of hope, and his psyche is so haunted by the demons of the night that it's hard to view this dude as a wholesome good guy. But isn't it strange that this is now the centralized interpretation of the character? Back in the 40s and 50s, Batman was all about the camp and comedy, full of hijinks and cockatoos. Cockatoos? That's what you're going with? Yeah. Over the years, significantly important adaptations have taken the character, contorted him, and changed his public appearance. The comics turn him into a detective, then a gritty old man, then a clown once again. It seems like with every new interpretation of Batman, we're trying to replicate a formula that worked before. Either the widespread success of Art Deco and noir from Batman the Animated Series, the dark theme and tone of Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, or the grounded drama-based cinema of the Nolan trilogy. And it's not just Batman. All sorts of superhero properties copy other superhero properties to varying levels of success, and sometimes these new interpretations feel like they're just trying to be something else. But this show doesn't feel like it was trying to be something else other than what it was meant to be. An entertaining and enjoyable cartoon for kids. It came out in 2004, a time where the cultural status of this character was in a form of limbo. The comics were everywhere, the show was following up one of the most successful cartoons of all time, and the last Batman movie was this crap.
She wants to kill you, dick.
This was a time when the character and the mythology kind of had to reinvent itself, and accordingly, the creators made this new world and aura for the Caped Crusader, from the designs, the tone, and the stories being told. With the success of Nolan's Batman Begins, the show could have easily shifted tones and chased that success in the same way so many films and presentations do to this day. But no, they knew the story they were telling, however non-narrative and kid-friendly it was, and chose to make a show that created that new aura the character so desperately needed. And that's something I never truly appreciated until much recently. See, I find myself rewatching a bunch of Batman stuff all the time, from Batman the Animated Series to some of the newer animated shows to 4K HD clips from The Dark Knight, and I do really appreciate them for what they are. But especially with the animated content of the past decade, I keep getting into that cycle of feeling like I'm watching the same interpretation over and over again. Gritty voice, depressing reflections on the past, yelling at a sidekick he treats with tough love. It's not like any of this is bad by any means, but I do encounter that mild sense of fatigue. But when I turn on this show, I feel a breath of fresh air. Oh, and I'm transported back to a world where I watch my favorite superhero suit up and glide across the blood-red skies of Gotham, a strange city he protects with all his life, alongside the heroes that made me feel represented, made me feel like someday I could become them, that those kinds of aspirations were achievable and not just a fairy tale. The Batman was a show that made me feel like I could be the Batman, and I've never felt that feeling anywhere else. To me, DC is defined by the impact that they make on the kids that enjoy their content. From picking up comics at the library, to going to the movie theater to see a movie every few months, to waking up early enough on a Saturday morning so you didn't miss the new episode of your favorite show. Beyond whatever complexity I add to the characters and the stories at hand, the most important thing this show did for me was be enjoyable, be bingeable, be there for me as a world to fill my dreams with. Warner Brothers and Detective Comics as a whole have gone down a weird path these last few years, and with the pandemic rising again and the ongoing controversies behind the scenes, I didn't know what the uncertain future of the company holds, but at least to me, DC will always be defined by this show. This beautiful, beautiful show that changed my life for the better, that I will hold with me forever, that showed me the power of the Batman. Thank you so much for watching this video, and be sure to check out all the other videos in the DC Defined playlist. Especially a really cool video called Must There Be a Superman by yours truly. The production journal, that is, not by Mithy from Film Caffeine. Hate that guy. With next week being the release of Coda, the promotional week finally begins, and we will be posting a lot of behind the scenes teasers and exclusive looks right here on the channel and around social media. So keep your eyes and ears out for that. I am so grateful to all of your support, and I hope you stick around till its imminent release this August 26th.